a New York that works so much better for all our people than we do right now. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I was born here, I grew up here. I am a proud public school graduate, and I am a prouder public school parent of 3 kids, Sam and Charlie and Max, ages 21, 15, and 7. New York is the state where I started working when I was 12 in order to pay for college, because my family warned me that they were not going to be able to afford it. It's the state where I've had my 40-long-year career, and where I'm raising my kids, and where I met and married the love of my life, my wife Christine. It's the state where I have fought for LGBTQ equality and women's rights and abortion rights, and for the last 17 years where I have fought for better funding, and particularly more equal funding for New York schools. I am standing in front of you today because of my first hero, who is also my forever hero, my mother. Because of the way she loved me, and because of the way she believed in me, and because of the way she taught me. When I was a kid, my dad was really troubled, and our home could be a scary place. And my mother was the opposite of those parents who tell you they had to stay together for the children. She was the opposite. She said that if I had never been born, she probably would never have left my dad, but she saw the effect that our home was having on me. And one night she found it inside herself to draw a line in the sand and to tell my father that he had to go. And when she did that, she saved me. And when she saved me, she saved herself. And she and I moved to a 1-bedroom, 5-flight walk-up. It was just the 2 of us, and it was hard sometimes, but it was much better. And we had been there maybe 3 years when the landlord, she got suspicious about the money that we had been paying. And so she went and investigated, and she discovered that the landlord had been cheating us ever since we moved in. And she was so angry because the rent had been so hard for her to come by every month, but the main thing I remember was how proud she was of herself, that she hadn't just taken his word for it, that she had trusted her hunch, and she investigated, and she held him accountable, and she held him accountable retroactively. She got our rent reduced, and she got our money refunded. That was my mom. And every moment that I have stood up in my life, including right now, it's because my mother showed me that I could, and my mother showed me that I must. And for me, there was no more pivotal moment in my life when I stood up than when my oldest child, Sam, entered kindergarten 17 years ago. And Sam and I walked into that building the first day, and it was so different than the school that I had looked at and picked out for him in the spring, because there had been these massive budget cuts. And they had had to let go of the assistant principal and the art teacher and the music teacher and 2/3 of the paraprofessionals. And I was so angry for Sam, and I was so angry for every kid in that building. And I ran into a parent that I knew in the halls who told me that the cuts were citywide, and that there was a protest happening and that we should go. And I realized in that moment, if this is how deep the cuts are in my kid's school on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, how deep are the cuts in Brownsville? And how deep are the cuts in Mott Haven and the Bronx, and in communities of color where the schools are so deeply underfunded to begin with? And Sam and I went to the protest, and I talked about how angry I was that when the budget is tight, our kids and our schools are always the first thing on the chopping block. And in the months that followed, I got more and more involved. I joined the Alliance for Quality Education, and I went to protests, and I started organizing rallies, and I testified in front of the city council. And I and dozens of other parents got arrested protesting these budget cuts. And the following spring, we were able to beat back almost $400 million in budget cuts. And I already knew from my mom that you can fight harder when you fight for your child, but when you join together with other parents across the system, and you fight for all the kids together, you're a mighty force. You're a force to be reckoned with. And that's what I've been doing for the last 17 years, because New York schools, if you can believe it, are the second most unequally funded in the entire country. We've got a $10,000 spending gap per pupil between our 100 richest and our 100 poorest school districts. So in a school of 500 kids, that's a $5 million gap. And in a school of 1,000 kids, that's a $10 million gap. New York State itself is the single most unequal state in the entire country. And it's not just because we have Wall Street and so many wealthy people here. It is also because we have such deep poverty. We have got more than half of the kids in our upstate cities living below the poverty line. Syracuse, for example, has the single most concentrated Black and Latino poverty of any single city in the entire United States. And the thing about this kind of crushing inequality is it doesn't just happen on its own. It comes from a choice. It comes from a choice to slash taxes on the super rich and the super connected and to slash services and opportunities on everybody else. And it's the kind of a choice that we're used to seeing made by Republicans like Donald Trump. But for the last 8 years, it is the kind of choice that we have seen made over and over and over again by our governor, Andrew Cuomo. Now, I voted for Andrew Cuomo 8 years ago because I remembered his dad and because I believed that he was a Democrat the way he said he was. But since taking office, he has been Republican and he has handed over massive amounts of power to the Republican Party. Who of you has heard of the IDC and knows what that is? Okay, so for those of you who don't, the IDC is a group of Democratic state senators that the governor and the Republican leader behind closed doors has incentivized to go over and vote and caucus with the Republicans, giving the Republicans the majority, the control of the state Senate, despite the fact that they don't have a majority. This would be as if President Obama had said to a bunch of Democratic senators, hey, will you go over and vote with the Republicans so we can make sure that Mitch McConnell runs the Senate? He hasn't only, though, governed politically like a Republican, he's also governed fiscally like a Republican. There is a reason that the Koch brothers gave him $87,000 when he ran in 2010. I'm them proud. Since taking office, he has eliminated the bank tax. He has slashed taxes on corporations. He has slashed taxes on everybody earning more than $300,000 a year. He has governed in a time of relative prosperity here, but his 2% austerity budgets have been balanced on the backs of our kids and our elderly and our economically disadvantaged, our most vulnerable New Yorkers. He has decimated our infrastructure, and he has starved our cities and our towns and our rural areas of the most basic services. I'm running for governor because I believe that we can have a New York that works for all of us. I'm running because I'm tired of the corruption and the dysfunction in Albany, and I'm running because I am tired of fake corporate Democrats who aren't going to lift a finger to enact change unless their donors say it's okay. Andrew Cuomo has raised $36 million for this campaign. And do you know where that money came from? It came from corporations through the LLC loophole. It came from wealthy individuals looking for a tax cut. It came from businesses eager for lucrative state contracts. It came from people he himself has appointed to office. $4.5 million of his campaign contributions has come from people he himself has appointed to office. Our campaign is not accepting a dime in corporate contributions. It is a campaign that belongs to the people of New York State, and I am so proud of the fact that we received more small dollar donations on the first day of our campaign than Andrew Cuomo received in 7 years. Of his $36 million, 0.1% of his contributions have come in small dollar donations, which means if you're an everyday New Yorker, the chances that Andrew Cuomo is actually going to care about your needs are exactly that.
That ain't right.
0.1%. We are a 2-to-1 Democratic state. And we are at a moment when more and more voters are rejecting the status quo. We're demanding more of our Democratic Party, and we're demanding more of our candidates and our elected leaders. Let me tell you about my vision for New York and the things that we can do here when we have a governor as progressive as New Yorkers themselves. First, we can fix the New York City subway. I'm on the subway every day. Andrew Cuomo is not on the subway unless it's a photo op. He's written it 2 times in the last 7.5 years. We know how to fix the New York subway, but we don't have the political will coming out of Albany to do it. I promise you that when I am governor, it will be my first consideration. Second, we will fully fund our schools. I mean all of our schools. Our schools are owed $4.2 billion that Andrew Cuomo refuses to acknowledge. We can end the school-to-prison pipeline here. We can level the playing field for every kid in every zip code, regardless of their income level, regardless of their skin color. We can enact a single-payer system here in New York, a Medicare for all system. I don't know how many of you watched the debate the other night. Andrew Cuomo says we have to wait to do it on the federal level. I couldn't disagree more. It's passed the Assembly multiple times. We are one co-sponsor away in the Senate from having a majority of senators supporting it. We can ensure every New Yorker we can do it better, we can do it cheaper, without co-pays, without deductibles. We can legalize recreational marijuana here. There are a lot of reasons we should do it, but first and foremost because it's a racial justice issue. People across all ethnicities and races use marijuana at the same rates, but 80% of the arrests for marijuana are of Black and Latino people. Using marijuana is something that has effectively been legal for white people for a long time. It is time to make it legal for everybody else. But it's just the beginning of the justice reform we need here in New York. We have to hold police accountable. We have to take minor offenses and make them ticketable offenses, not arrestable offenses. And we have to guarantee a right to a speedy trial, to discovery, and most especially, we need to end cash bail in New York State. There are 25,000 people in New York's jails on any given day, and 70% of them are there because they can't afford bail, because they're poor. We can't have one system of justice for Harvey Weinstein and another for Khalif Browder, which is what we have right now. When I'm governor, we will treat our planet like our home, and we will hold fossil fuel billionaires accountable when they poison our communities. We will enact a polluter's tax, and in the first year alone, that will generate $7 billion, which we will use to turbocharge a just transition to 100% renewable energy. We need to do voting reform. We have some of the least democratic voting laws in the entire country. We need to do campaign finance reform. That is the reform that will give birth to all the other reforms. Through the LLC loophole, corporations can donate an unlimited amount of money to political campaigns. Andrew Cuomo said that he would close this LLC loophole, but since taking office, he has received $16 million through it, which is more than every single legislator in Albany combined. It is hard to do the right thing when you're accepting millions and millions and millions of dollars to do the wrong thing. Finally, we have to make New York a real sanctuary state, not just rhetorically. We have to do it with policy. We have to pass the New York Dream Act so that dreamers can have access to higher education. We have to pass the Liberty Act to stop our law enforcement from cooperating with ICE. And I promise you, on the first day of my administration, by executive order, I will expand access to driver's licenses to all New Yorkers, including undocumented New Yorkers. Not having a driver's license is the #1 way that ICE is coming into our communities and racially profiling people, tearing families apart, and turning New York into a police state. If we care about protecting New Yorkers, if we care about fighting back against the Trump agenda, why isn't New York doing this? This is a terrible, terrible moment in our country's history. But in New York, in this 2-to-1, deeply progressive, diverse state, if we approach this moment correctly, it can be a tremendous opportunity to enact foundational change and to come together as New Yorkers have always done, and to show the country that there is a better, fairer, more inclusive way forward. We have to elect more Democrats to office this year, but we also have to elect better Democrats. There are thousands of progressives who are running for office for the first time this year. Many of them are women. I'm so inspired by them, and I'm so proud to count myself among their ranks. I'm Cynthia Nixon. I'm running for governor because I love New York, because I love all of New York, and I know that you do too. And that's why I'm asking you for your support. Thank you so, so much.
What an amazing speech. I just have no words. A round of applause again. So now we will have the amazing city council member and candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Jamari Williams.
What's up, everybody? Great speech by the next governor of the state of New York, Cynthia Nixon. My name is Jamari Williams, and I'm hoping and prayerful that with many people in this room, I'll be the next lieutenant governor of the state of New York. You know, a lot of people talk about my activism. I think New York Times called me the agitator or troublemaker, and when they do, I always make sure that I say thank Brooklyn College for that training ground, because a lot of it happened right outside of these windows. I see the Bettis Pin, Dave Bryan, folks who helped us students way back when, who can attest for how much trouble we tried to cause. Right here, I did my first debate running for student government president. I lost by 2%, 97 votes. That will not happen again. I did, however, become grad student president in similar kind of debate. So I'm excited to be here. And as I mentioned, I'm an activist. I'm a community organizer by training. This is before Barack Obama. Nobody knew what it was. My mother said I'd never make a living. We did it anyway. And running city council was the trajectory of the work I think I had been doing. I was told not to run for council because it was too much of a stretch. It was an incumbent in the race. There were 6 people running, and we did it anyway. And everything lined up. And I've been trying to cause as much trouble as possible in the city council and the city of New York for the past 9 years with amazing amounts of productivity. The biggest thing that was complained, as I mentioned, was I was too much of an activist. I decided not to let go of that or being an elected official. I adopted both. The way the world works, in 2018, every elected official is claiming to be an activist, even though I hadn't seen most of them in the streets, but that's another speech. I was ranked as the most productive council member in the 51-member body after the speaker. We passed more legislation than any city council member. We affected the budget in a progressive way, in a way people thought we would never be able to see. And I'm running for lieutenant governor because I know that not every Republican is a bigot, but every bigot voted for Donald Trump. And I do know that we don't have that orange man simply because of the bigots. They did what they were supposed to do. They actually voted for someone who was speaking to them. I'm running because the Democrats did not have the courage of their conviction to adopt the message, irrespective of who the candidate was, that would help protect the people in this room and across the state and across the country. I'm running because I honestly believe any blue just won't do. And as I see the governor and lieutenant governor struggling with concepts that they're just not used to because they are now trying to change from the wind. These are folks that adopt whatever the wind tells them to adopt. But I know that people in this room are actually the winds that have created the winds that they're now responding to. And that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor, because the current lieutenant governor says that the job is to be the eyes and ears of the governor, to do whatever the governor says. I reject that out of hand. I want to be the eyes and ears of the people of the state of New York. I want to raise their voices and their interests. I want to be the people's lieutenant governor. That's what's needed in 2018. That's what we have to prevent that orange madness from coming down to the ground. I haven't seen any leadership in the governor's office. I've seen fellowship at best. And the lieutenant governor believes the job is to be the fellowship of the follower. And with this team, you have tremendous amount of leadership. It is incredible for me, lastly, to point out that identity politics is critically important. I always say it's important to see yourself as race, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, whatever, to see yourself in that place. I always make sure I end by saying I don't necessarily want folks to vote for me just because I'm a black man. And I always say I don't want to lose those votes, so I'll take them. But but I want people to vote for me because of the vision I've laid out of what the lieutenant governor's office can and should be. The fact that we have no public advocate's office on the state level like we do here, no one holding people accountable on behalf of the public. I want people to vote for me because of my history in the city council, even going back to being an 18-year-old here. That's why I'm asking people to vote for me. On top of that, that is the meal that's sustaining. The gravy is the identity. The fact that I am a black man, the fact that I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and Tourette's syndrome, made it through the public school system from preschool to master's, the fact that I'm a first-generation American, my parents came from the Caribbean, the fact that my mother raised 2 knucklehead children by herself. That gravy on top of the meal, I believe, is the package that's needed in 2018 to make sure that people's voices are lifted and not the people who have big money and big construction. That's what we need, and that's why I'm asking for your support and letting everyone know the vision that we have and what's needed. So, lastly, I'm going to say, I think I see college students here, and it's particularly impressive because there's no food. Oh, there is.
There is food, Jamari.
No, I thought that, I was going to say that was impressive because you can get nobody out here with any food.
We did it.
Without food. Okay,
we did
I see
it.
that. Second, I'm just going to say it's time. You say let's go. It's time.
Let's go.
Let's go.
It's time.
Let's go.
It's time.
Let's go.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Again, another amazing speech. I mean, this is incredible. We have such amazing speakers here and candidates. So now is the time to make a very important announcement. I, Carlos Jesus Calzadilla Palacio, I'm the president of Young Progressive America, the national organization. We're a nonprofit dedicated to empowering young people across the country to create progressive change. And with some serious consideration, we don't give out these endorsements lightly. We are proud to endorse Cynthia Nixon and Jamari Williams for the next governor and lieutenant governor of the state of New York. We recognize that we are a pivotal moment in history, but the winds of change are on our side.
That's right.
What we must do is harness that change and create true change in our country that will last for future generations. Now, Jamari Williams and Cynthia Nixon embody what it is to be a progressive. They are not beholden to special interests and corporate America. No, they are not. They are beholden to us. And that is why we believe they are the best representatives for us and us young people. Also, they've been championing issues that deeply affect young people, such as immigration, public education, transportation, the environment, and so much more. Now, I gotta say that this is a very inspirational moment for me. Someone who started this organization in my dorm room freshman year, and now we've been able to grow and involve so many people and fight for so many important issues. And standing here endorsing 2 amazing candidates really means a lot. So I really want to thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
We did endorse Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez as well, another young person, and we're really happy. That things are changing in this country, and we're making that change happen. So now we want to transition to some questions. We're running a little bit out of. So Corinne Green, she will be moderating the questions. She has her list. So please give her a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have time for just a few questions before the candidates have to leave. But as the chapter president here at Brooklyn College, I particularly want to thank both of you, Cynthia and Jamari, for coming to a CUNY school. CUNY often, as students and faculty here, we often feel like politicians and people aren't listening to us, and they don't care about the things that's going on in public higher education. And I truly believe that Brooklyn College specifically, and the entire CUNY system, is really a representation of New York as a whole. And we have over 500,000 people in the CUNY system. So I just want to remind all of you that the election is on September 13th. It's a Thursday. And that is the primary election that is going to be so pivotal that we all turn out to vote, everyone in this room as well as all of your friends. We have a closed primary system, so you have to be a registered Democrat, but I just want to remind everyone that Thursday, September 13th, is where we as CUNY students can have our voices heard outside of this room. But I want to take the next few minutes to take the opportunity to have our voices heard inside this room in this wonderful opportunity. And I'm going to call on just a few people. We'll try to keep these really brief. We only have about 7 minutes. So first, I would like to call on Dr. Perez Gonzalez from the Puerto Rican and Latino Studies Department to ask a question. You can just stand and ask from your seat.
Hello, Ms. Nixon.
Hello.
And Honorable Councilman Jamari Williams. My understanding is that in this new round of contract negotiations with CUNY, Governor Cuomo is insisting that New York State not pay fringe benefits, that CUNY has to absorb that cost. As a result, several CUNY presidents, including Brooklyn College's president, has instituted a faculty hiring freeze. In the last round of contract negotiations, we waited 6 years before a contract was ratified. While it's illegal for us to strike, it's not illegal for CUNY admin in New York State or city to drag their feet and leave us without a contract. This measure of austerity that is being imposed directly affects students, faculty, and staff. One key example, to give you an example on the floor of how it's working itself out, I'm the chairperson of the Department of Puerto Rican Latino Studies, PEARLS. We've been understaffed. There's usually a standard of 5 to complete a department. We are now at 3 and have been missing faculty since 2013, despite our overall growth in all categories. Our students are among the most vulnerable populations in terms of their historical underrepresentation in institutions of higher education and graduation rates. And in this political national climate, the Latinx, Latino population is the target of horrendous attacks on various fronts. So we, faculty, are on the front lines. The ethnic studies departments are on the front lines of educating students from all walks of life about why Latinx people are here, how we got here, what the trends are, and our projections moving forward. PEARLS was engendered by the civil rights movements and student activism to educate and equip, to help them with interdisciplinary knowledge as to how to interact in this world. We're more relevant today, perhaps, than almost 50 years ago when we were created. So my question to you is, there is a lot of talk about diversity and inclusivity and equity, but actions do not follow those words. And so we in PEARLS, PRLS, feel like Puerto Rico does in many ways, in that we have outsiders determining our future because we're understaffed. And this trickles down to all areas. In this climate of CUNY downsizing ethnic studies programs over the past few decades, and talk of collapsing them together to save money, currently, what is your position on this? What will you do to support and strengthen CUNY ethnic studies programs and diversity initiatives to ensure they are adequately staffed and resourced to carry out the important mission in New York? And will you commit yourself to funding the fringe benefits as part of our contract to resume CUNY faculty hiring so the freeze can go away?
So I think I'm going to go over here because I don't feel like anybody can see me. So thank you. First of all, I just want to say a really heartfelt thank you for the Young Progressives of America to endorse Jamari and I. It means the world to us. And as we know, we have such a powerful progressive movement happening across this country, and so much of it is due to young people. You guys really are. We are looking to you. We may be the ones up here running for office, but you are really the leaders of this progressive movement, and thank you. This endorsement means the world to us, so thank you. Yes, I mean, we have such limited time, there is so much to say, and what we've seen with Governor Cuomo with his defunding of major institutions, whether you're talking about the New York City subway or whether you're talking about the CUNY and SUNY system, are terrible economics, terrible planning for the future. Of the 20 organizations, the 20 institutions across the United States that help lift people out of poverty into the middle class and beyond, 12 of them are in the CUNY and SUNY system in 2-year and 4-year programs. Yes, so what we need is, and so I have an Educate New York platform that if you go to cynthiafornewyork.com, you will see. I'm calling for a much greater investment in SUNY and CUNY and a bunch of levels. Certainly, the Excelsior program that we have now only benefits 2% of CUNY students. only about 22,000 people. I have a much broader definition of who would qualify. Everybody essentially whose families earn up to $80,000 a year. It would take the 22,000, it would add another 170,000 people on, and it would be a first dollar in, and it would not have all of the many strings attached that make almost no CUNY and SUNY students eligible for this program. But I think equally important is how we have defunded CUNY and SUNY and at the faculty level, and how much less CUNY and SUNY teachers, faculty make than teachers, when you adjust for cost of living, it's like 20% less than elsewhere across the country. And I do think that whether you're talking about the college level or whether you're talking about K through 12, it is vitally important that you have teachers teaching students who look like those students, and that the curricula available are a culturally relevant curricula. So absolutely, everything that you talked about are a full part of my platform. We need to make sure that we need to bring CUNY and SUNY faculty up to a more livable standard. We're hemorrhaging faculty because people literally can't afford to pay their bills. And benefits need to be a part of that. And absolutely, we have such an incredibly diverse student body here that it is really important that we fund those departments that are teaching Black and Latinx subjects. So yes, absolutely.
So Cynthia Nixon has to go. We're running out of time, but we want to thank her so much for coming. Jamari will stay here and answer a couple of questions. You know, but no, we really want to thank everyone. Like I said, we're going to stay, but Cynthia, thank you for coming.
Thank
I know you just have to leave.
September 13th. Don't forget.
Please, thank you, thank you.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, so you can answer the question after.
All right. Hello again.
Hello.
Like I said, I'm sorry you got me. I'm trying to answer. Thank you very much for that question. It is important. The reason that I believe the governor would say something like that, not supporting fringe benefits, is because he doesn't feel that the faculty has the same amount of money that some of the corporations have. But I'm happy in September 13th to realize that we have more folks than they have money. And that's critically important. As I mentioned, I'm a CUNY student, so this is very important to me. I got my education here. As Cynthia mentioned, the Excelsior program is a sham. It's the type of thing that this governor does. He puts out something with a lot of shine on it, but when you take away the bells and whistles, the smoke and mirrors, it's really not much. Just to repeat, only 3% of students across the state have Excelsior. Less than 2%, I think it's 1.7 of CUNY students have Excelsior. So it's a huge problem. I have on my website a fairness fees that I'd love people to read. It's $20 billion. Everybody say 20 billion. Say billion with a B. Billion. It's important because with that money we can fund a whole slew of things, including free tuition. It's important to me that I used to sit on the higher education committee at Brooklyn, at City Council, and I actually asked the CUNY administrators if we can fund them from the city what they need to make ends meet, or however I phrase it. Would they still charge tuition going forward? And they said yes. And that was astonishing to me because I think we should be working for free tuition for public education. And if anybody, I'm sure people are aware, when the biggest expansion of CUNY happened, do people know? That was during the Great Depression, because they said they have to educate the population to help get out of it. And of course, everybody knows it was free up until the 1970s when the complexions began to change and then they started charging tuition. So we know what works. I'm very proud of the PSC. They've been supportive of me in my council races. I support them now. And I know that although this affects everyone, all the faculty, I'm sure it's decimating our adjunct faculty that is being called on to do more and always getting less. So I think with that $20 billion, we can fund fringe benefits and can fund more. In terms of institutes, I in the council, Rodney Spichat was a leader, but in the council, I made sure that we got the funding needed for the first ever Haitian Institute program here at Brooklyn College. So I'm very proud of that, and that's the kind of work that I want to continue.
We're going to take another question, I guess, for Jamari. Andrea, who is the creator of our famous or infamous Brooklyn College Instagram page. Yeah,
I like your stuff a lot.
Okay, so my question is short, to the point. My question is, how do you plan to address the lack of adequate funding for the CUNY system in terms of the crumbling infrastructure and inadequate pay for adjunct professors?
I think I answered most of that with the first question. That $20 billion is very real. It's not pie in the sky, and it can fund not just inequity in education for K-12, some of the CUNY problems that you raised, also issues of Cuomo's transportation crisis, Cuomo's MTA, Cuomo's housing crisis. There's a lot we can do with $20 billion. I'm still here often. I work out in the gym about 3 days a week. Wish we could get some free weights. That's another conversation. But so I still very much, I'm a part of the Brooklyn College family. So it is important to me that not just Brooklyn College, but CUNY and SUNY are adequately funded. I feel like the government duped a lot of people with the Successor program. They finally took the commercial down. I haven't seen it in a while. But only when they began to be exposed as the sham it is. We just have to invest in CUNY and SUNY. The dividends that get paid by investing in CUNY and SUNY students far outweigh any initial investment that we have to make. We tend to find money for things that we believe are priorities. The budget is a priority sheet. So you look at it and find where the government believes they have the priorities. Unfortunately, things like CUNY and SUNY haven't been it, so I'm not shocked to hear about the government not supporting decreasing it, or at least what I found is that he talks a lot and the action doesn't back it up. And there's no one there to hold him accountable. And the way I'm positioning this Lieutenant Governor's office, I won't have to hold Cynthia as accountable as it would the governor, but there should be somebody there that is speaking up for the people. I'm just going to stay standing.
Perfect. We have another question that relates to the current Lieutenant Governor, who went to my high school, but Jamari went to my college, so that's way better, from Professor Cunningham.
Is that Professor Cunningham?
Yeah, that's Professor. Oh.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you? Look, I'm really happy and proud to see you here. Your opponent, with all her money, is running a commercial. It characterizes your views and characterizes them in a way that does not reflect the person that I know, or the history of the person that I know. And so I'd like for you to address that. And I would say that, I don't know what kind of progressives they say they are, but we need honest progressives.
Thank you, Professor, and very good to see you. Thank you. Two issues that the Professor is talking about, marriage equality and abortion rights. Those are ones that I have a very strong record on all of those and everything, including marriage equality and abortion rights. But they try to distort some interviews that I did because they have nothing else to go on. And so they put some commercials. She's dropped about $1 million on commercials, which I've taken as a compliment because it means I'm doing well. But I want to be clear, and I have been for anyone that will listen, I support marriage equality and I support a woman's right to access safe, legal abortions. And I support actually reproductive justice, which is a much wider conversation that includes abortion rights. It's important to understand what happened. So they take slices of interviews. I would invite everyone to read the entire interview because I always end the same way. But what I did try to do was discuss how a person of faith like myself reconcile making sure they maintain faith and not use that as an excuse to harm people in supporting marriage equality, in supporting the rights of a woman to have safe and legal abortion. And my voting record is the same. Everything I've said and supported has been the same throughout my career, and so I'm very, very proud of that. So all they can do is make some slivers of comments that make it seem like it's the opposite, but they know it's not true. They know it's a distortion. They know it's really salacious to say that, but they actually have nothing else. My opponent, by the way, has taken some terrible votes. My opponent, the only thing I've known Lieutenant Governor to lead on, and this is her words, is saying that I have led the fight to prevent undocumented immigrants from having driver's license. And not only that, she said if they apply, she would turn them over to the federal government, she would turn them over to ICE. She also got the NRA endorsement over Chris Collins, who was the first person to endorse Donald Trump. She voted for concealed reciprocity for guns, meaning she wanted people who have a permit, who has a permit in another state, to be able to bring their gun here in New York State. The excuse that she used is that she was in a conservative part of town, and that's what she had to do. And it's unfortunate. If you look at the responses, unfortunately, usually based on race and class, and it's much different. I also come from a conservative community. The Caribbean community is very conservative on social issues. Growing up in the church, it is conservative on social issues. I have never allowed that to be an excuse to vote for something that will hurt people that need protections, whether it's civil rights, whether it's abortion rights, and I'm very, very proud of that. But I thank you for asking the questions, and I'll answer any questions that folks have on those issues. But actually, what's crazy, my voting record, I had a bill that was the largest expansion of the LGBT community rights in about 10 years. People may not know it, but folks began to know me around the abuses of stop, question, and frisk. The bill that we passed to deal with bias-based policing, we made sure it included sexual orientation and gender identity, so police can no longer be biased in those two areas. We also included housing, so we can protect our homeless as well. The bathroom bill that came and voted on the city council with great colleague of mine, Danny Drum, came through my committee. I made sure we championed and got it passed. So I have an awesome record in both of those issues. I have a bill right now, actually. I hope we get passed. It's called a boss bill. I had no idea that an employer can discriminate and fire someone based on their reproductive decisions. It is wild in New York City and New York State that can happen. I have a bill right now making its way through the council so we can change it.
Okay, so can we do two more? Do we have time for two more?
I don't know.
Okay, great. So we just have a quick follow-up to that, and then I'll touch base with those who have their hands raised. Next question, just a follow-up, was from Professor McKay, who works in the LGBTQ Center here on campus.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. First of all, I live in this district. Thank you for being my councilman. I really appreciate the work that you did. This has ended up being a follow-up question to the last one. Given the Supreme Court's recent decision in Masterpiece case and the pending nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, the LGBTQ community is very concerned about the concept of religious exemption. What can you and Cynthia Nixon, as leaders of the state, do to prevent people from trampling on other civil rights by claiming religious exemption?
I have I'm gonna tell you a story, and it was part of my evolution, well before I was councilman on these issues. My dad, may rest in peace, voted for, and please forgive him, voted for George Bush the son the first time. Please forgive him, I said. And the reason he cited was gay marriage, and he cited it to me, and at that point we were more aligned. But I remember him citing it, saying that the destruction of the marriage and the marriage unit was the reason. And something went off in my head because I had 6 brothers and sisters, and my dad is divorced and he's living somewhere else. And I said that had nothing to do with 2 people getting married. So I said, Dad, that doesn't really make sense. And so at that point, I started realizing that some of the things that you're taught don't add up. And I always make sure that when that happens, I choose justice and equity every single time. And so I know Cynthia Nixon, who is trying to be the first woman and self-identified queer in the governor's mansion, backed by someone like me, will make sure that we don't allow people to use religious exemptions to trample on people's rights. As a person of faith, I want to make sure that there's a space for everyone, but I feel like if you are providing a service that's outwardly facing to the public, then you have to provide that service for everyone. And I think that's an important and key thing to make a distinction on, and I've tried my best to do that. As a matter of fact, with the bill that I just mentioned, the Catholic Church came to me and had a conversation about the concerns. And I always try to make sure I kind of work with everybody. I heard the concerns of the bill, and we made changes that both the Catholic Church and Planned Parenthood were happy with. And for me, it's always to make sure that we provide those protections, and that's always going to trump everything else. At the same time, the person of faith, I do understand, but you know, it doesn't always. Faith has been used to do a lot of crazy stuff to folks, and you always keep that in the back of your head. I don't know if I answered your question. And I'm very proud to have the Jim O's Club. If you know Jim O's, Alan Roscoff, he's a fiery person on the LGBT community, and we just got the Trans United Fund the endorsement across the state that work on our trans brothers and sisters. By the way, when it comes to the hate crimes, trans women of more color are being murdered across this country with impunity, and we have to make sure we lift up their voices.
Great. We have time for one more question, and I would like to prioritize students. Okay, great. You're really eager. Excuse me.
Thank you. I'm Ms. Williams. As somebody who struggled for years to pay tuition, because I don't get financial aid, and have had to pay my personal expenses like rent, what do you and Ms. Nixon plan to do about the rising cost of rent? Because while tuition is one thing, we have to pay tuition, but what about rent? Because I've struggled for the past year to pay my rent and stay in my apartment, which I've been in for 7 years. But within the last year, 2 years, it's just gotten more and harder to pay rent. And I love East Flatbush. I don't want to leave it. Brooklyn College is my home.
Am I your council member?
Yes, you are my council member. I just want to know what are your initiatives to help with the rising cost of rent? Because I've heard the different, debates about it, but I just don't see anything happening. It's just the cost is going up year after year. So tuition is one thing, but what about for us who just have to pay tuition out of pocket and pay rent, and rent is skyrocketing year after year?
Thank you for that. By the way, my first civil disobedience arrest happened as a student leader fighting for tuition hikes in CUNY, so I'm very proud of that. The most palpable failure, and there's a few failures of this government, but the most palpable one for Buffalo, Brooklyn is housing. So this is the governor's housing crisis. There are a lot of parts there that I would love to, we could have a whole town hall just on the housing crisis. One, by the way, so Cynthia has put out a platform which I support, which is universal rent regulation across the state. We have rent regulation in New York City and surrounding suburbs, but most places in the state do not have rent regulation. And so across the state we're finding something called just cause, because people are just being evicted with no specific reason. But here in New York City, we have to strengthen the rent regulation. They're going to claim that they're doing the best they can, but they're not. You look at the money that the governor receives and who it comes from, you will understand why the rent laws are the way they are. So we should repeal ERSTAT, which you probably have never heard of, but it basically prevents the city council from making housing law and allows Albany to do it, so that people like the IDC and the Republicans, most Republicans don't have one rent regulated apartment, but they make decisions based on the rent regulation that's here. And we have to fix that. We have to fix the loophole that has preferential rent. Most tenants don't know they have preferential rent, particularly in neighborhoods that are gentrifying. So you come in at one rent, but they can hike it up in the next one, and you discover that that's not the real rent. And it's important because a rent hike can be the same as an eviction. And we have to change a lot of different avenues of which they raise rent, whether it's MCI or II, which is individual apartment improvements or major capital improvements. Also vacancy decontrol, where they hike up the rents if you leave. All these things we can do in rent regulation. And here's what the governor did as well. There's something called, you probably never heard of it, called 421A. It was a tax abatement given to developers, basically writing them billion-dollar checks. Supposed to get affordable housing, affordable to whom, but we didn't even get the affordable housing that we should have gotten. He made it worse. So now 421A gives more money to developers, and we get less affordability back. We used to at least be able to negotiate in the same year, 421A and rent regulation. He made sure that 421A is now in an out year, so we can't negotiate. Rent regulation is up next year, and so I want folks to pay attention, because we're going to have to do acts of civil disobedience and make a lot of noise to force a governor. Hopefully it's going to be Cynthia Nixon, so we don't have to worry about it. But we want to make sure who's making decisions are not beholden to real estate. The other thing where the city fell is happening in the city council administration during rezonings. So people may hear rezonings happening. We have not gotten the income targeted housing that we need in this city based on those rezonings. I believe me as a part of city council have failed residents. The administration has failed residents. There's something called mandatory inclusionary housing, which I voted against, and I'm hoping the city council will reopen it. They are now trying to fix the failure of it with overlaying some additional needs, but we've missed out on too many. We should just reopen it. Most people, when they hear rezonings, hear of the large ones like Inwood and things that make the news, but people don't realize that the smaller rezonings that happen almost every single month, those are critical because housing is coming there. The single thing that I think we can do to deal with the housing crisis is to get rid of Andrew Cuomo and to get rid of the IEC and put in people who really believe in the progressive mantle when it comes to this issue. There's hope, though. I don't even want to sad note. There's hope. Oh, and I didn't say thank you for the endorsement.
Oh, you can do that now.
I very much appreciate, this is awesome. I'm not sure what the definition of young is, but I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm very excited to get the Young Progressive American endorsement. It means a lot to me. God bless everyone. Peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We're about to wrap it up, but please wait for a sec. We have a few final announcements from the campaigns. They're probably going to like to make a quick little pitch. Also, there's a sign-in sheet going around. Please put your information down so we can let you know when our next events are, or actions. Like I said, we have been really fighting on the front lines of a lot of issues, from public education to immigration, stopping 2 deportations, and we want to keep that work going. If you want to get involved, you want to be an officer, sign up, let us know. Thank you very much. It's been very successful. Really appreciate it. Young people, we are the future. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, and also just remember, make sure you signed in. If anyone wants to come, stick around. We're going to be doing some tabling, some voter registration initiatives leading up to September 13th, really increasing visibility so everyone on campus knows this election is happening. That's going to be pivotal. Okay, thanks. And I think Louis from the campaign wants to make a really quick announcement. But other than that, Maple Talk, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you at our next meeting.
Good afternoon, all, and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today. Hope that it was pretty fruitful for you all. Just so you know, we have some material back in the back room there. There's some stickers, there's some posters, there's some pins, so we invite you to take some of those, use it and get the word out there.